the riots and demonstrations that happened in downtown Salt Lake City. Specifically, how, why, when, and who had the motivation to turn over the police cruiser. We're kind of dissecting that part of the riot, and we're examining it. We're showing you a clip. I interviewed a couple people about the riot who attended it. We did a lot of digging for this episode, so I hope you'll check it out. I have my phone in front of me right now because we're doing an Instagram live. So those of you on Instagram, go check it out on our YouTube channel. It's the Utah Stories YouTube channel. Would love to have input from people who were there, because there's a lot of strange things about what happened at that point, and we're going to be going into those in just 1 minute. So hope to see you on the program and open up to your comments and questions with Sylvia. What's your last name again?
Castro.
Sylvia Castro from the Pete Suazo Center. She's going to be on the program with us today, so it should be a really great program.
Just quick thing. It's just Suazo Business Center.
Oh, Suazo Business Center. All right. Mm-hmm. So hope to see you there. I'll leave the Instagram live now, and join us on YouTube for the rest of the program. Okay. And we'll get right started. So we're going to be talking about the riot, but we're also going to be talking about how COVID has impacted small businesses, specifically minority-owned businesses, and also how these recent protests are impacting small businesses. It's quite an eye-opener, especially with the curfew that was enacted and things that have happened. But before we get to that, I want to tell you the Utah Stories Show is brought to you by Canyon Meadows Grass-Fed Beef. If you haven't yet tried pasture-raised beef, you need to try Canyon Meadows. Their ranch is located in eastern Utah in beautiful Altamont. You can visit them and stock up on ground beef, roasts, and steaks. It's all locally produced, and then the cows spend their entire lives on pasture. And if you haven't tried the difference yet between factory farm and pasture raised, you need to taste it. Go give Canyon Meadows a try. Visit their website at cmrbeef.com and choose your own package of steaks, ribs, ground beefs, roasts. I personally use Canyon Meadows as my meat supplier for all our backyard barbecues, and I'm constantly blown away by how tender and delicious their meat is. Visit them right now at cmrbeef.com. and use offer code UTStories. They're good for the earth, good for you, and they have delicious flavor. All right, so
yes.
Sorry,
I'm writing that down. That sounded great.
Yeah, you guys got to try them. They're
I was
awesome.
like, you have me at meat, so.
So I want to start off the program by playing a clip for you. I had to do quite a lot of digging. I saw a lot of still images, but we found a live video showing the tipping point of, it's both they're tipping over a police cruiser, but it really was the tipping point for the whole demonstrations activities, the demonstrators who were downtown, and how it went from peaceful, really by and large, just people who wanted to show their solidarity and support, to violent riot in a matter of minutes. And this was the tipping point. Let's show that video right now. You can see they're all youngster, younger people, about 20, 30 years old. Only one person of color there. Now another guy joins in. Now it's about 10 people trying to tip over this car, and everything else around at that time was going peaceful. This woman then goes and immediately dumps something all over the cruiser. That looks like something flammable, but now we see all these people start to go crazy, and it's not something fun to watch. I was watching these videos all morning of the riot, but what I learned, and we can just play one more minute. He said, "This is what they wanted. We tried to do this peacefully. This is what it's come to." And he has a megaphone. I would really like to find out who he is. This is what they wanted. We tried to do this peacefully. This is what it's come to. And he looks like an organizer of some sort. He's wearing a t-shirt. He has a megaphone. But he obviously absolutely doesn't represent Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has totally disavowed themselves and their organization from any violence that happened in downtown Salt Lake. They said anybody in their chapter who has been found doing any violence at all will be immediately taken out of the chapter and not a part of the organization. This guy just tried to light something and stick it inside of the cruiser. If you saw that, he lit something like a smoke bomb. Then everybody backs away. I won't show you the rest of the 30 minutes of video, but what happens is that it was terrible. A woman defecates on top of it. All these people start pounding up and down, and then in the meantime, at the Capitol and around the city safety complex, there were peaceful organizers, and a lot of people were trying to stop people from going to this part of it. And so anyway, I went in downtown Salt Lake City yesterday and the day before, and I started to talk to people about what was going on. And this girl told me at a coffee shop, her name is Victoria, that this entire incident felt set up. She said she was there, she watched it transpire. First of all, it was very strange how the police cruiser showed up. It was an officer who could have gone through with his car, but he chose to stop. And I would need to verify this with a second or third source if I could. But the police officer stopped his car right on 400 South, right in the way of the protesters, got out of his vehicle, left the scene, and left his vehicle in the pathway of the protesters. And she said it felt totally set up. And I would just like to use our platform and this discussion forum to find out if other people would corroborate that that's what happened, and that this was like staged and planned. Because if so, what was the purpose of it? Because after this happened, everything descended into chaos. It got much, much worse. People started pounding out the windows. If we have a clip from later in the day, we'll edit it in. But everything went to hell after this. And then the city and county, the library started getting tagged. People started smashing windows in the public safety building, in the library, and it all went terribly bad. A quote I had from the Deseret News and the Tribune of the mayor is that she said, we were ready to let the protest go unchecked. We were ready to let them do what harm they wanted to do to buildings and to a police cruiser. And it almost sounds like she's saying they donated the police cruiser to the cause of the protesters. If that's the case, that's just crazy. Why would you allow a group of protesters who were mostly obedient and just wanting to get a message across, why would you donate a police cruiser to the most angry so they can tip it over and set it on fire? It doesn't make any sense to me.
But it seems like there was two groups of people. I mean, like you said, everyone in the beginning, it was very peaceful.
Yeah.
It was very peaceful, and which is kind of what we all expected.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned into the most shocking thing we probably would have never expected to happen. I mean, it was, I was watching at home and just could not believe everything that was happening. But what's interesting is all of a sudden you saw a group of young 20-somethings kind of flood the protest.
Yeah.
And these were the ones that overturned that car.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, mayhem begins. Every single African-American leader in this state had asked for a peaceful protest. None of them. None of those protesters were linked with any kind of group that was about solutions, that really was about the problem that we have as minorities, when we're working with police. And now it has turned into look at the rioters, look at the
Yeah,
violence.
look at Salt Lake City. This is Salt Lake City. And if you're
Right.
just joining us, this is Sylvia Castro from from the Suazo Center. She works with immigrant populations on building small business plans, and she was in my Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses program. And yeah, thanks for being on the program, Sylvia.
No, thank you. And that's part of it. I'm sitting there horrified because I know all of the small business owners within that vicinity. And I was just appalled. I was sick to my stomach. All of these business owners, these are their life savings. I mean, they have already gone to Corona. They're barely getting back up. And this happens. All of that damage to their locations. These are families. This is not a government. This is not a man. These are families.
Yeah.
So it definitely, what's interesting to me is frankly, their efforts has hurt the minority community in so many ways.
Well,
that,
and it,
yeah,
I mean, it feels like this violence was incited by, as you said, a small group of people. There were probably over 1,000 people on 400 South around the Public Safety Building and the library, maybe another 1,000 over at the Capitol, and nobody wanted to see anything like this happen. We're not in Minneapolis, and we're Salt Lake City. Small Lake City is our nickname because it feels like a small town still. And then to see that there were no police on the scene, there was nobody in the immediate aftermath of the cruiser being tipped over, trying to just get those people aside. Only after the cruiser was set on fire did a significant number of officers show up. And I'm not in any way blaming the police, but whatever group organized the tipping of this cruiser and how and why it transpired that they allowed it to happen, that's the part that seems extremely strange, that I feel like if enough people watch this program and who witnessed this, who maybe took more video with their phones, or maybe some people were paid to do this. I've heard that. I'm not going to say that that's what happened, but
if you looked at the screen and actually I think the Desert News printed a list of the people that were arrested. All of them came from Utah. They were on average about 22 years old.
Yeah.
And part of me goes, what exactly are you protesting? You're 20 to 22. What hardship have you endured?
Yeah, where, like all those white kids,
where's the angst here? Why?
Yeah, what sort of police brutality have you suffered from? And I'm all for protesting. I'm all for civil disobedience when it's required, but violence on our streets and causing mayhem, causing destruction of property, creating a riot environment. So all these small businesses had to shut down that were in that area. I talked to Setabello Pizza on 5th West. It went that far to they didn't feel safe staying open any longer. I talked to the owners of the ramen shop on 3rd South. They didn't feel safe staying open. And it's just unfortunate because I just don't think it needed to go that way.
No, I mean, and there was also then the curfew happened, and there has been so much confusion in terms of, well, I work there. Can I still work there? Can I open up my business? What can I do? And
yeah,
and I don't know. It's just so frustrating because, I mean, frankly, I think minorities got hurt out of this more than anything, because first of all, even though the hope is to have those conversations. We want those conversations to happen about the police issue that we have. But now we're talking about rioting, we're talking about violence. And what's interesting is that it's kind of being pegged to minorities, yet we weren't there. We are feeling the effects of it, yet we weren't there because most minorities are frankly busy working. They were not there. They have to usually do 2 or 3 jobs to feed their families. And they're trying to, and frankly, if you have seen the numbers, coronavirus has hit them at a disproportionate rate.
Yeah.
And this is just making everything worse. And
Let's talk about the curfew a
yeah,
little bit. What
yes.
I mean, what kind of reasoning do you think the mayor was going by? All these small businesses were forced to be closed. These bars and restaurants, they're just getting back off the ground, and then she tells them the customers can't stay longer than 8 p.m. She after imposing that curfew. What I mean, how is that logical, especially when the vast majority of the demonstrators are peaceful?
Well, what's interesting is, and this is the problem with the curfew, is there's a lot of confusion about it. Because if you look at the curfew, there were exceptions. There were exceptions that you could still go there. You could still open up business. You could still patronize those businesses. But no one got that.
Mm-hmm.
Because all you saw was the message on the screen on your phone saying these are the curfew hours. So no one went, even though there were exceptions that they were actually still allowed to do that. But frankly, it's, not only were customers confused, the business owners were confused too. They
Well,
were
I,
not
I mean,
sure
all I
to
got was
open.
on my phone, and I couldn't believe it when it showed up 2 days ago. Uh, Salt Lake City has extended the curfew through, I believe, June 9th.
Mm-hmm.
From 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., you cannot be on any city streets unless you are an essential provider, a police officer, a medical worker, or a media. That doesn't tell me I can go to a restaurant. That tells me
Right,
stay
because
away.
there's about two more paragraphs after that one. You had to, and frankly, we were trying to research it fast and furious because we were trying to get that message out to the minority community. Because they're like, what is happening? If a police officer happens to stop them and they don't know why, it's a problem. And and that's with essence. I mean, this has really made it worse in some sense because now they look at like, where can I go? There's police everywhere, and I'm not sure if I can even open up my business anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I talked to one small business owner who owns Diversion Eatery, and he said to me he decided to brave the rioting. He's on
Mhm.
Marmalade District, which is a few blocks out of the way,
Yeah.
um, and not abide by the curfew, and he stayed open, and he had an amazing dinner rush that night. The rioters got hungry, or the protesters, no matter, I don't know which one it was, but they needed food, and he was open, and he said he had the best Saturday night he's had in 2 months. And
Wow.
then he stayed open on Sunday, and I think he also was, if he was abiding by the curfew law, he shouldn't have been open. He said he had an amazing Sunday. So, I mean, I just feel like we're living in an environment where if you actually obey the law, you are going to suffer as a business owner, or as a resident, you're not going to be helping the social fabric that keeps our communities alive, and that's not a good situation to feel
And
in.
that's the, I mean, we're already having enough to deal with. Coronavirus, we are dealing with the freaking have dealt with the earthquake, not this. And the one time we actually need to figure out how to do this together as a community, this is actually bringing more separation.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and I just keep thinking there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And I think if anything, this is a time to think, the usual has not worked before. Why do we keep doing it?
So, did you tell me you were on an advisory panel for the mayor at one point, or you still are, or?
No, wasn't part of the advisory. It was back in last year. It was part of the transition.
Oh,
But
okay.
I was looking in
Because
terms of the
somebody
economic
like
development.
you needs to be
Mhm.
advising our mayor. I think she has the best of intentions. I do not believe for a second she has any bad intentions. But what she's doing is trampling on the civil liberties of small business owners. And it's just, she doesn't understand, first of all, everybody needs to get going right away. Everybody needs a paycheck. Everybody needs to pay their employees, make payroll, make their vendor costs, their pay for advertising again. All that needs to happen really soon because people have families to feed and bills to pay. This slow rollout that we've had um, and it's just taking too long. And these bars, and this is a critique we had of the Salt Lake Tribune. If you examine the coronavirus numbers and you understand uh, what the best immunologists are telling us, if you are healthy and you are under the age of 55, no pre-existing conditions, really you should be 100% back to work, interacting with people with a mask, using social distancing practices, washing your hands a lot, but you are extremely safe. Your chances of dying are extremely small. And I been researching the coronavirus coverage in Germany and Great Britain, how they're reopening especially in Germany, they're completely reopening their economy because their epidemiologists are the ones in charge. And they're the ones who are saying the economic cost and the economic repercussion is so much worse than the damage that can be caused by the virus itself. We need to be getting up and going right now. And it's not a politically divisive issue in Germany. It's everybody's on board with that. What do you think's happened with our coverage, our media coverage in terms of this pandemic?
I mean, and I think it has been mixed. And this is where, frankly, I think the media coverage has created a lot of confusion. Because we have gotten mixed messages in terms of what's safe, what's not safe. And I think there's certain things we know, like you just covered. If you're over 55 and you have also other underlying medical conditions, you're more at risk. But if you are healthy, if you keep social distance, if you keep a mask, if you wash your hands, and you set up those type of things, you should be able to reopen. But what's tough is that, first of all of the small businesses are already behind about 2.5 months because they had to shut down for 2.5 months. And the majority of small businesses, they don't have that much in reserves to stay alive. So they're already hurting. They're trying to make it through. They're trying to reopen. But now they're trying to reopen, there's also additional costs. They have to buy all this equipment too, because also the safety measures involve equipment. They have to have gloves, masks, all these things cost money. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's so tough being a small business owner. But they're still pushing through. And this is where I'm hearing a lot from businesses in downtown area, basically saying we're suffering. But what's interesting is that it's also affecting the city outside of downtown. It's affecting people in Rose Park, in Glendale, in Sugar House, because they still have the curfew. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that kind of surprised me, for it to be citywide, mm-hmm. in terms of just specific to the areas where the actual violence happened.
Yeah.
And that can be a problem because, you're talking about Marmalade. Marmalade's actually was not touched. It was close to the Capitol, but there's a lot of businesses there, and I can completely understand maybe with the downtown ones, they're trying to reopen. I'm not sure if they wanted to open during, especially during the violence. I have friends that live in that area, and they were absolutely terrified when they saw everything that was going outside. And frankly, that's where I kind of wonder why. That's one question. And again, I'm not an expert. I was kind of surprised at the patience of the cops.
Yeah, the restraint. Exactly.
The restraint, and then it was such a restraint that was.
And then
I was really surprised because it went for hours.
And then when they finally did realize, okay, this is getting out of control. There's people. A lady defecated on top of the cop car. They're writing "F the police" on the cop car. It was just turning into a mob scene. When they realized that, I saw them some guy pushes a guy with a cane out of the way. Yeah. And I watched more clips, and I will show this clip, not for the live stream, but when we play the recorded version. The guy with the bow and arrow, dude was insane. And he was absolutely an insane person.
I'm like, what is this? Yeah, when I saw that, And I think that guy has probably reached across the whole planet right now. Everybody has seen that, and it's just still in
Uh,
disbelief.
I cannot believe it.
Uh,
And then he said afterward, this is the clip I saw, he gets beat up. And actually, they went kind of easy on him considering he was just fine and conscious a few minutes later. But then he's
mhm.
interviewed a little bit later and he said, yeah, some African American man jumped me inside of my car. I was inside of my car driving and they punched me in the. No black people jumped that guy. It was all white people. And
Yes,
these white, 20 somethings again beat the crap out of him. And then he went on to say it was caused by black people. I mean, talk
right.
about to make a bad situation even worse. It's just was unbelievable.
Yeah, and this is I saw that, and I was just like, why? It's
Yeah,
and I mean, and as I asked that question to a few people were, well, that's racism, and I'm like, no, that's more than racism,
yeah.
because it's almost like you're purposely blaming someone that was not there.
Yeah.
That's
He
not
was trying to
racism.
create
That's
his
that
own
goes
narrative.
right,
He was trying to he had some delusional idea in his head that he was going to use his bow and arrow to stop all the black people. And then he gets jumped by a bunch of white people in their 20s and beaten up and
right. Well,
but
and then we saw every single cop basically from outside Salt Lake City come in. We saw, I mean, there was all of a sudden some Murray cities, West Valley City, Salt Lake County Sheriff. We saw the next thing you know, we have the National Guard.
yeah,
Um,
all these off-duty officers who were having backyard barbecues saw that violence erupt. A
right,
lot of off-duty officers showed up wanting to preserve the peace and it got crazy
right.
downtown.
Well, and I was seeing a few of the protesters were actually getting hurt themselves. And this is why I'm like, to me, this seemed like another group completely, because the actual protesters were getting hurt during this.
Were
There
they?
was glass being thrown. There was, I think, there was
There was
projectiles.
rubber bullets being
Right, that
shot by
too.
officers, and yeah, it didn't feel like Salt Lake. It felt like Salt Lake was hijacked by a group of people who had a motive to cause a riot. That was their objective, and I would really like it if the police would investigate it along those lines because that's how it just felt totally contrived to me.
Right. One of the interesting things too that I saw, and I actually just confirmed that this morning, is I only saw two police chiefs. Well, one sheriff, one police chief, actually on the ground with their people, and that was the West Valley City police chief and the Salt Lake County sheriff. They were actually down there with their people. No
Really?
one else showed up.
Wow.
Um,
I didn't realize they were there.
yeah, they were physically there. They saw their people getting hurt. They saw their people in need. For what I understand, they were dehydrated. They were there for a long time. It was hot. They had those uniforms. They were dehydrated, so they got a bunch of water and went out there.
Wow. Huh.
Um,
That's pretty cool.
and
And the whole vibe of
mhm,
the so I watched a ton of footage over the last couple days. The whole vibe of the protest up until the time of the cruiser being put over was they were chanting, they were doing little demonstrations about uh, hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot, hands up, and then I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. But they were all doing things where they were kneeling down, everybody was together. That was happening around the public safety building. And then I hear this uh, jacked up UTV looking thing, and
mhm,
it's revving and revving and revving. And then I hear the sounds of what sounds like bullet fire. And this is right after the police cruiser is tipped over. So these sounds that are sound like bullet fire and this revving up sound add to the whole mayhem environment.
mhm,
And it just is such a contrast in why the majority, 90% of the people were there, why they were there with these people who knew for some reason to all gather right out in front of the library where that police cruiser was left. And Yeah, and so if anybody watching this has any insight, do we have some comments, Tyler?
We do. It's mostly just gibberish. I
Oh,
heard something about like someone playing sounds over like a speaker.
yeah. It sounded like machine gun fire over a
Yeah,
speaker. That was really weird.
I heard about that too.
And
Someone's just out there to spark fire. Yeah, literally.
so yeah, if I don't know if the Black Lives Matter organization is doing their own investigation, or if the mayor is doing a deep dive. I mean, but the really strange thing is why did the police chief order that cruiser on that street? That is the biggest question we have that's completely unanswered.
Wasn't I mean that kind of became a little bit the symbol of the riot.
Yeah.
It's really I think there was a bit of tension. You can feel the tension in the air, and then that vehicle kind of lit things up,
Mm-hmm.
literally. Um,
And what? So according to my eyewitness account, they left that cruiser there in front of the library. The officer left. He wasn't going to defend his vehicle, and he wasn't going to try to stop people. So was that left as ordered by the chief of police or the mayor to be like, okay, here's our sacrifice to you who want to who want to vent your frustrations out on something? I mean,
has there
that's
been
what it
any
seems like to
mention?
me.
Have you heard anything about why that police car was there? Maybe was it there for to stop people, or I don't
No,
know.
that's what that girl Victoria said felt so contrived about it that she saw it from the beginning when that police cruiser was left and the officer left the scene. And she just said this, and then she stuck around to see it get tipped over and set on fire, and she just said the whole thing felt set up and contrived. So I think the mayor and the chief of police have to answer for that. You know what happened there, and we'll try to get to the bottom of it. It's really what I enjoy doing. It's why I became a reporter. I see strange things and I ask these questions, and I really love this platform of social media and YouTube. If anybody else has any leads or answers, I got a lot of great help this morning in researching this topic.
Somebody said he saw a mysterious fire like on the mountain range east of Salt Lake, but he doesn't know if it's related. He didn't see any news articles about it. So,
Huh.
and also Josh says white genocide is the end goal.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a few comments for you.
Yeah, you get a lot of trolls on YouTube, but overall, I think that the discussion has been very good. I mean, in terms of the somewhat hot button issues we've been examining. Obviously, Utah Stories is an advocate for small business owners, and we want to provide the voice of local Utah. And in doing that, we're examining the coverage that the Salt Lake Tribune and the newspapers are providing. But while we ask questions like this that are in depth, I would love to see more of the media tackle questions like this, because when you see something like this happen, I strongly believe we've got to get to the heart of what caused it. Otherwise, it could happen again, and I feel like people get used as pawns, and situations get used. Like the whole statement, never let a crisis never let a crisis go to waste. It's a statement by Saul Alinsky, and now it's in the playbook of not only the Democrat Party, but I believe the Republican Party. And I think we see that being played out over and over again. Both of our political parties see these crisis situations, and the last thing they want to see happen is this situation or this crisis go to waste, to not have either their enemies try to lose points or lose credibility due to this crisis, or to not use it as a way to elevate their points and their party.
Yeah, but the sad thing is we're dealing with people's lives, people's businesses, people's way of making a living. And you can't keep politicizing things because something's got to give.
Yeah.
And and this is where, we have the issues like how did this happen? But and that's what happens usually when we're about to look at something that is changed. It's like, boom, we get distracted. This happens. So now let's focus on this. And this is why this issue just keeps getting sidetracked. This is why change is not happening. The actual change that people wanted, that supposedly they were protesting about, is not. They're not about that change.
Yeah, that's a great point. What is it those protesters really want to see happen? What are their policy objectives? Right. Let's listen to that.
I mean, I think you're giving them more credit than that. I don't think there's a policy objectives. I think they saw this as an opportunity to be violent.
Well, I mean, the majority of the demonstrators who were there, do they have, like, Black Lives Matter? She seems like an articulate woman. What are her policy objectives? What are her objectives that she wants to see happen in this country to put the lives of Black people on a higher pedestal or platform? And do you know? I
mean, frankly, I think it's been well covered by some of the African American leaders in this community, and I cannot speak on behalf of Black Lives Matter, because also I think the minority experience is also different in every state, and I'm pretty sure it's not something that is going to be one solution fits all.
No, to me, it's economics. It's basic economics. Everybody needs a job. Everybody needs opportunity. Everybody wants to have the opportunity to start a business and work hard and see the fruit of their labor manifest into a nicer home, a better way of life for their children, more opportunity for their kids. It's like,
right, but they also want to feel safe. They want to make sure that all these challenges, that all this work is secure, is safe. They want to be safe when they're at their businesses. They want to be safe when they are at home. And now it seems like the issue is not only do they have to worry about police, now they have to worry about protesters too on top of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when we can sit down and have a rational, good discussion about what can be done to make our society better, what can be done. I mean, one thing we focus on in this program to stop the widening of the gap between the rich and the poor. Why is that gap growing? What are the socioeconomic factors that are causing a greater percentage of the population to be more and more or lower and lower on the socioeconomic spectrum than and the rich keep getting richer? What's causing that? What do you think it is?
Sure, that will have to be like 2 other podcasts.
Yeah, it's a huge question. I've been thinking about that for a lot of years now. What is actually causing it? And I think that lies at the underlying problems that we face. And I think it's affecting minority communities more because America has always been the land of opportunity. It's always been the place where you can take your hard work and your labor and your effort and turn that and translate that into a business and wealth and success. Do you think we're losing some of that, or do you think it's still alive and well?
I don't know. I think we're starting to lose the status. Things are starting to change. One of the things that we work a lot of, I am an immigrant and a lot of my staff is immigrant. One of the discussions we were having is that never in our lives would we have ever imagined living in the United States and dealing with a curfew.
Mm-hmm.
So that blew us away because this is the kind of thing we're used to back in our countries. We're talking South America, Central America, that we see this kind of measures. And it was shocking. When we first heard it, we're like, this is really happening. And it kind of, to me, is starting to signal there's more and more changes that are showing us that we kind of have lost our way as a country because we're not as good as we used to be.
Well, when you hear curfew, I mean, being where you're from Mexico, is that right? Mexico City?
No, I'm from Ecuador.
Ecuador. Mm-hmm. What kind of imagery or connotation does that word have in your mind?
For us, it's military action. It's scary. It's usually that's one thing is frankly, things here are, I guess, is comparisons, right? it's, you know, there's the police, that's nice. But I mean, we're used to full force military action. You cannot be in the street. The streets are empty. Um, it's scary
Yeah.
to hear curfew. And for us, it's called toque de queda, which is doesn't quite, it's interesting because the translation's not equal. It's basically saying this is, it's like a stop of activity.
Hmm. Where you can't go outside at all, or your life will be
No,
threatened. Is that kind of what
well,
you're
it's
saying?
not, it's basically all activity stops. Toc- uh, Curfew with toque de queda means that no one can be outside, that no one can be open, that you basically stay home.
Yeah. And
That's, I mean,
you
that's
hear
what
the
it
word
means.
lockdown too, and quarantine.
Mhm.
And to me, I in the beginning I just thought I'm just not taking this seriously at all. I'm going to the park. I'm gonna go on my run. I'm not even gonna give it a second thought. But then I see people who are actually really afraid to go outside of their houses. We had some friends, and they're like, oh, they came back from Florida. They were in Florida for like 2 months, and they come back and they're like, you were outside of your house? Like, why would you do that? You're supposed to be under quarantine. And I'm like, well, that's just the mayor saying, trying to protect people because we don't understand the virus. But they were like, no, we're not leaving our house. And I just think that
But
everybody hears words and they all mean different things to different people. But I think you're right. You hear the word curfew. I mean, for me, that was like when I had to be home at night before my parents would freak out. But
yeah, your version's a lot nicer than what we are
yeah,
used to.
but you hear words like lockdown and quarantine and curfew and this authoritative government happening at the local level, where our constitutional rights of freedom of assembly, freedom of doing peaceful assembly, meeting our neighbors, meeting friends, having a gathering, that's now illegal. That's a clear violation of our Constitution, and certainly there are times when those measures have to be enacted in times of emergency.
Mhm.
But I think we're past that now. It's not an emergency anymore, and only measures that extreme should happen in extreme emergency, extreme uncertainty. Then you give people the information they need to assess risk. And that's something we do every single day already living in a free country. We always assess our risk. When we get in a car and we go someplace, there's always a risk. When we walk across the street. So why can't we use our own risk assessment with the information we know about this virus now and have all of our civil liberties back? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, but think about it in the sense that you also actually have the privilege of deciding whether to stay in or out. A lot of the people in the minority community are not considered essential workers, so life hasn't stopped for them at all.
That's true. Yeah.
I know I keep seeing the rate the of the coronavirus increase and increase, and I'm like, I'm not surprised because they're the ones usually in closest spaces. They also have not really been told what is how you're supposed to deal with this virus in a timely manner. There has been a lot of miscommunication, but frankly, a lot of them are contracting it at work too. And
Really.
this is where it's tough because for a lot of our communities, it is choosing the lesser of two evils. Do I stay home and keep these measures, or do I make a living for my family? Because I have to feed them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the choice they have to make, and this is why they will show up every time, because a lot of this community they don't have any kind of financial resources getting to them. None of them have received any kind of the checks that everybody received from IRS. A lot of them they're not receiving unemployment, they're not receiving anything. And this
Yeah.
is why they have to keep working. And that's part of it, where frankly, I'm like, they're busy working. They will never be at a protest.
No, and we had on the podcast a rancher who's a state senator, very familiar about with the meatpacking industry,
Hmm.
and how thousands of workers walked off the job at these massive slaughterhouses, which is the whole reason why beef prices have skyrocketed, and because there was massive coronavirus outbreaks among the minority communities working in those meatpacking plants.
Hmm.
And that's because they have 3,000 people working in one factory assembly, a factory operation, and they're shoulder to shoulder. Those
Right,
people are right next to each other, and there was no social distancing measures put in place at all for those people. There was no change at all to their work environment. They
right.
just kept working because they were essential workers, and in that case, it caused obviously terrible harm.
They were essential workers, yet they were not protected.
Yeah.
And this is, and unfortunately, we're seeing this again and again everywhere. And it will, but the interesting thing is this will affect us. This will affect us because they're getting sick. They're not longer able to do the job because they've been getting sick. They're down. Who
Mm-hmm.
else is taking their jobs? They don't have many people taking up their jobs. Um, and this is part of the reason why food distribution is starting to suffer. We're starting to see those prices go up. But people are realizing how we are all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
They did not realize that before.
Yeah, and as far as calling a worker essential, if you compared a a finance person who maybe does investment banking at Goldman Sachs, who's earning a huge amount of money, with a person who's working at a meat packing plant where they're providing all of this meat at such a low cost to thousands of families, who really is more essential? I mean, it's obvious these people who work at the minority positions and or the work at the bottom end of the socioeconomic spectrum, who have very difficult jobs, work very long hours. They're absolutely essential to our way of life in America.
Right, yet they're not, they're very underpaid and they're not protected. That's what's sad. That, and that's what's interesting because it's a complete reality. It's almost like we're in completely two different cities or completely two different states because they are two different realities on how this virus is impacting them.
Mm-hmm.
Because for some it's an inconvenience, but for most people in the minority community, it's just make things even harder than they were.
Yeah. So there was a statistic printed in the Salt Lake Tribune, that I believe it was 34% of all the coronavirus cases were Latinos in Utah, and that's a much bigger percentage than the percentage that Latinos are of the makeup of our
Actually, it's
population.
higher now.
Is it?
I think it's, yeah, I think it's over 30%. Latinos make up 14% of the population.
Wow. I'm glad you know those
Latinos
stats.
officially make up the majority of the cases in the state.
And are you finding that these people do you know some people who have gotten it, first of all, personally?
Yeah, I know a few people that have gotten it now.
Have they?
And what's interesting about the virus is it's sometimes hard to tell where exactly they got it, but usually it's entire families that get it. It's not just
Yeah.
one person. It's usually entire families that get it. And the reasons you're starting to see the numbers starting to climb up is frankly is because they're barely getting tested. A lot of them were not going in to get tested. If they feel ill, they will still go to work. They will push through and not get tested. Also, there's certain.
Why don't they want to get tested? Isn't it free for everybody?
It's not a cost deal. It's basically a risk factor. Again, it's do you feed your family, or do you follow the guidelines?
Yes. Yeah.
You're asking somebody if they get tested and they get positive, they cannot work. Some families cannot afford that.
Wow.
And the problem is that if that person is sick, they come back home, they have three other people that are working that can no longer work because they're supposed to self-quarantine. They cannot afford that.
Yeah. How in the world could you do that? How could you quarantine if you live in a small house with 10 other people? I mean,
Right. And if because you've been exposed to them, you're supposed to all no longer work. That's not an option. And it's also from what I'm seeing is people feel it differently in terms of some of them is more mild than others. Others get to the point that they have to be hospitalized. And if it feels like something, maybe I'm coming down with something, the issue is that a lot of people can carry it, but they don't know it.
mm-hmm.
They might be fine or they might be low symptom for a while. And if they are, they will never get tested because they don't see a problem.
That's exactly what I heard from the
Right.
the epidemiologists in Germany. Is the whole problem with this virus is up to half of the population that has coronavirus is asymptomatic. Is what they discovered from their test. I'll link to that clip in this video so people can watch it. But they basically just said there's no way we can contain this. They gave up, and they said so. All we can really do is open the economy up to healthy people, tell at-risk people to stay home. I mean, what do you think is the answer? That's Germany's answer to this.
And it's interesting because I actually been following Germany, Sweden's, and Korea's answer too, and it's fascinating to me because some of these countries, I am amazed at the data they have.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only do they
Germany has amazing
everybody
data.
Coded.
Way better
They're
data.
literally like they know this person and where they went and everything else, and it's interesting. And I think frankly a lot of it is let's use what we know. And a lot of the things that we know are simple, and this is where actually what I'm seeing is people trying to complicate simple.
Mm-hmm.
Social distance, wash your hands, don't go sick anywhere.
Don't stay inside for very long if there's a lot of people there.
So if it was interesting, I think it's because they're so common sense. They're easy, but people want to make it more complicated.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting that we keep reminding people to wash their hands. We should have picked this up by first grade.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's hard for guys, I think. I'm not in the habit of washing my hands. After I go to the bathroom, yes, but like
I just made you feel guilty.
yeah, but I don't wake up in the morning and wash my hands, and I hate to say it, but I don't usually wash my hands before dinner. I hope my kids aren't watching this.
I mean, if you come from outside, you should wash your hands. If you come in contact, with dirt, wash your hands.
Yeah.
It's,
any place you go, I mean, a store where you touch surfaces, wash your hands. But I need to tell about one other sponsor of the Utah Stories Show. This show is brought to you in part by the Carpet Barn, who's been in business in Salt Lake for over 40 years. Their staff is friendly and helpful, and they have a huge selection of carpet, which if you are looking to save money and have really awesome carpet, theirs is definitely the best price for what you get. I carpeted my basement with higher end carpet, high thread count. It's really plush, it's beautiful and awesome. I paid $9 a yard, and the last carpet I bought at a big box store was $12 a yard. It is far, far better. So go check out the Carpet Barn in South Salt Lake and mention you heard about them on the Utah Stories Show. That would be a awesome help for us. So, Sylvia, do you have anything else that small business owners especially should know moving forward? What do you think is going to happen in the next 6 weeks to 2 months? I mean, what can people do?
Frankly, it's almost like, what should we plan for next week?
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to plan for next week every week, and it's just really difficult to figure it out.
I think one of the things frankly, it's just know your customer, be in communication with your customer. I think that's frankly the number one thing. It's I think we're all experiencing this. And being just open with your customers about what's going on is always a good practice. And letting them know. And you also try to have them be your champion through everything that is going on. Things are shifting, and they're shifting to a level that some of it we cannot control. So let's just focus on what we can control and try to do the best for what the business needs to do. But also, I think this is part of why the customer part is key, because customers have changed. I think all of these events have changed all of us at a level that we're probably not even aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed us how we purchase things, how we purchase services, what we look at things. And that is something that, frankly, all the small business owners need to keep up with at the moment.
And I think it's easy to get kind of scared thinking things will never be back the way they were. But if you are a small business owner and you keep optimistic and think that, well, if I'm a survivor and I make it through this, things could be better than they were before.
Right. Well, what was that quote that you were saying? Never let a tragedy go to waste.
Yeah, Saul Alinsky.
Yeah. So, in essence, frankly, that's what entrepreneurship is all about. We look at opportunity. The opportunities are shifting, and part of this is the creativity spirit. It's the creative spirit of having a business. Is where's the opportunity? And things might not be back to what they used to be, but could they be better?
Yeah.
Maybe something was not working before. This is an opportunity to make it better.
Excuse me, I need my water. But yeah, thank you so much, Sylvia. I really appreciate your insight into all these crazy things we're going through right now. If people want to learn more about get some help from your organization, can you tell people how you are found and how the Suazo Center can help them?
Sure. So you can find us. You can call us at 801-521-1709. You can also email us at frontdesk@suazocenter.org. We also have Facebook pages. What we do is we help businesses start and then business grow. Our focus is in the minority community, but we're here to serve the community.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. I sure appreciate your support and your comments and your help today on Facebook. We will keep this investigation going, and if you have any more helpful advice or leads into how this police cruiser got tipped over, we are hoping to provide an answer to that in greater detail a little bit later in the week. And this show is produced by Tyler Bond, Connie Lewis, and Golda Hukic-Markosian. You can visit us online at utahstories.com and subscribe to our newsletter there. That's where you'll get all the updates and information about what we're doing and what we're working on. The best possible way you can help us out is to share this podcast with a friend, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or subscribe to us on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.